had my name in the paper, and the headline, it was Eugenio Saraceni. And I didn't like the looks of the name. It sounded more like a violin player than a golfer.
What is the width of your stand? What happens when you have a very wide stand? Oh, a lot of things can happen.
Phil and I, every night, we'd have double shrimp cocktail, double sirloin steak, and if we felt like we'd have a third one, you know. And finally he says, fellas, if you're going to have more than one, we have to charge you another $2.
Get your weight to the left side, everything's to the left side, into this position, the right side fire.
It's the Hogan grind. It's a steel shafted club. Sells for about $650.
Help! SOS! Save our sisters! What's wrong with you folks? Are you going to let the ladies' PGA Tour die a slow and lingering death?
Welcome to the wide world of golf. To start us off, Jack Whitaker explains why all that's golf is not golden.
The 1990s will be the decade when private clubs will be pressed to end discrimination against women and minorities. Lawsuits have already been filed concerning the Olympic Club in San Francisco and Burning Tree outside more renowned golf clubs involved. At issue here is that all-American dilemma of freedom of privacy and free association and the fight against discrimination. When the Jews were denied admission to the golf clubs in this country in the early part of the century, they went out and built their own clubs, usually better than the ones they had been left out, and more comfortable with much better food. And then they would smother their non-Jewish guests with hospitality. Well, women and minorities can't do that in the 90s, and unless the private clubs change their rules on their own, the courts will settle the issue and local governments will administer the rulings. Can common sense prevail? Certainly the word has reached every admissions committee of the passing of Queen Victoria. What if women come into the grill room? They usually brighten it up. And I think it'd be great fun to belong to the same club as Michael Jordan or Chichi Rodriguez. We all discriminate, and we should. I wouldn't like to belong to a club that had for members drug pushers or terrorists. Groucho Marx said it best for all of us. I wouldn't, he said, join a club that had me for a member. The only thing we should discriminate against is mean-spirited people and the like. But as we know, not everyone thinks that way. One of the arguments against women at golf clubs is that they slow up play. That's why they're regulated to afternoon tea times at many clubs. It is, of course, nonsense. Men hold up play more than women. Women have more common courtesy on a golf course than a lot of men who spend 10 minutes looking for a lost ball and stalk every putt as if it's Sunday afternoon at the Masters. But that is only a small part of this overall issue, which is certain to escalate in the next few years. Some localities will deny country clubs their low tax assessments if they don't end discrimination. And that will force some to become more expensive and more private, and others to go out of business. So during the 90s, that country club world that flowered in F. Scott Fitzgerald's Roaring Twenties and proliferated since World War II will be changing, just as the world outside those for members only signs is changing.
One of the most difficult shots in golf is the 80-yard bunker shot. The reason it's hard is because the shot's too long for you to blast it. You've got to go ahead and make clean contact, contacting the ball first and then the sand. Here's a few pointers that'll help you out. First thing, dig your feet in to get a firm stance into the sand so you don't slip during your swing. Because you've dug your feet in, you've lowered your center just a little bit, so you have to go ahead and choke up on the club to try and contact the ball first. You want the ball back from your stance about toward the middle of your stance, your hands forward, and your weight a little bit toward your left side. That will also help you to get more of a descending blow, which will allow you to contact the ball first and then the sand. I'll go ahead and try and demonstrate here. I'd take that one. Now remember, dig your feet in, choke up on the club, ball back, hands forward, weight on the left side, and make sure you follow through. This shot will be a lot easier with those few tips.
I think of Curtis Strange as a golfer who has probably done as much thinking about the game per waking minute as anyone since Ben Hogan. He once told me that some of the most productive time in his career was spent on long-distance drives to golf tournaments. He filled the hours pondering his golf swing and ways to improve it. Curtis doesn't have to travel to many tournaments by automobile anymore, but he has remained one of the game's great thinkers. As insular as he can seem on the golf course, he's one of the tour's more animated players on the practice tee. He loves to experiment, willing to employ the theories of teachers as diverse as Jimmy Ballard and Mac O'Grady, always looking for something he can borrow. A lot of that passion for the games comes off the screen in his first instruction video, Win and Win Again. Curtis gives you a distillation of 25 years of battle-tested knowledge in a 68-minute video that has enough good moments to make it well worth the $29.95 it costs. The presentation is well organized, with a 9-chapter table of contents that is easily reviewable. That's important because this video is best absorbed in small sections at a time. The production quality is high. Footage from Strange's back-to-back U.S. Open victories gets the juices flowing and brings to life some of Curtis's major points. Particularly striking is the stylized slow-motion footage of Curtis swinging against the black backdrop. It is repeated in the review of each chapter, and it is evocative of the classic Cybervision golf videos and their soothing osmotic effect. It's also nice to see a golfer who looks good in tights. Still, the presentation is not too slick. Curtis addresses the camera with surprising naturalness, an approach that forgives the few verbal bobbles. On most of this tape, he is a highly involved teacher. What he lacks in polished delivery, he makes up for with knowledge and conviction.
Weight to the left side, the left knee moves, the left hip moves, but it moves only so much. Then the right side moves, and that's what we weren't taught growing up. I was taught pull, pull, pull with the left side. This way disconnected, this way too much laterally to the hole. What we want to do is take that thing down, you get your weight to the left side, everything's to the left side, and to this position, the right side fires.
One thing I like about this video is that it's not afraid to say the game is hard. Curtis promises improvement, but only through diligent practice and a grasp of the fundamentals.
And we hit a lot of bad shots. We have to go back to the basics. I think what we've been talking about from all the way from Jack Nicklaus down to whoever it might be, has to go back to the basics, once a week at least, and think about it. So there's times now, I don't hit it fat, or I don't hit a slice or hit a hook, or lay the sod over a 2-iron, because we do all that stuff. We just hope we don't do it at the wrong time.
Curtis is at his best as a teacher in chapters 3 and 4. It's where he focuses on the swing changes he made in 1980 that eventually transformed him into the best American player of the decade. He demonstrates the pitfalls of the reverse pivot and the fallacy of the straight left arm. Tying his ideas together is a concept of connection. Curtis learned it from Jimmy Ballard, who unfortunately is not credited here. These 2 chapters are highly autobiographical, the condensed evolution of a great player. The ideas are not easily grasped, but neither are they condescendingly watered down. The rest of the video never quite reaches the level of these chapters. Curtis has little new to say about rhythm and tempo, or about alignment. There's humor to liven up the dull spots. Watch Curtis try to effect a laissez-faire approach to the short putt.
All you can do is aim it and then whack it. If it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So let's try one more. Oh, you son of a...
You get a lot of what made Curtis a champion in this video. Overall, it's very good on the complex parts of the game, ordinary on the simpler parts. But that's better than the other way around. Win and Win Again is an instruction video worth having.
Hi, I'm Steve Melnick. In this segment of state-of-the-art instruction, we'll look at aim and alignment, which also involves your stance width, ball position, and posture. In other words, your setup to the ball. What's so important about a proper setup? Well, even if you had Sam Snead's or Seve Ballesteros' swing, your shots won't go where you want them to unless your aim and alignment are correct. In fact, Jack Nicklaus, who will start us off with aim and alignment to the target, believes that once you've learned a correct setup, you've mastered 80% of the game.
Is it easier to line up a 2-foot putt or a 40-foot putt? Well, obviously a 2-foot putt. Likewise, I'm sure it's much easier to line up a tee shot from 3 feet than it is from 250 yards. For the purpose of this exercise, let's use this tee. Now, that's illegal to do that during a round of golf, but when I am playing a round of golf, I try to pick out a spot, whether it be an old tee or a piece of dirt or a divot or some grass, something that's readily identifiable. And I try to draw a line from that spot back through the ball. So I'm sure you've seen me walk back behind a shot on television many times and do this, and what I'm really doing is I'm looking down the target line. I've picked a spot, I've got my ball, and I've got the target. And I try to draw a straight line between all those three spots. So let's see, this tee here looks, well, it's pretty much on line with the target. So I'm back here, I'll look at it, I'll walk up to the ball, and what I try to do is I try to take a parallel stance with the line that I've drawn, this imaginary line that I've drawn back through the spot, the ball, and the target. Now, of course, when I take a parallel stance, I then can get the ball right off the right spot in my feet. And of course, I do not want my lines converging. In other words, I do not want my feet working to the right of the target or at the target. I want them parallel, not converging. So here we are, parallel lines. We know the ball's in the proper place in the stance. I look up for comfort, and now I'm ready to hit it. Not too bad for an old man, huh?
Stance width follows naturally after the alignment of your feet. It makes sense because you're already focused somewhat on your feet. Here then is Lee Trevino to help you determine how far apart your feet should be at address.
What is the width of your stance? What happens when you have a very wide stance? Oh, a lot of things can happen. One, you can't turn very well off the ball. Two, when you're coming back down into the ball, you stay on the right side too long. Results, you go over the top of it, you heel the ball to the left, or you hit a big fade. If you have your feet too close together, what can happen? Well, you don't have very good balance. You will sway off the ball or you will fall forward. What is the correct width of a stance? In my opinion, you should measure the width of your shoulders. Apply that to the inside sole of your shoes. Now that is the correct width that you should have a stance with the driver. Now with the irons, naturally, you come a little bit closer with the feet simply because the arc of the swing is not nearly as high. So if you're falling off the ball or you're not turning, chances are your stance is too wide or too narrow.
Now that you know how wide your stance should be, Greg Norman has some advice on where to place the ball in relation to that stance. Norman's method may differ from what you usually hear on this subject, but there's more than one way to play this game. Maybe Greg's ideas will work for you.
The idea of the game is to keep it simple, to keep the basics simple, keep it natural, understand the game, feel it, repetition, understand which your 5-iron goes a certain distance, your 7-iron goes a certain distance. That's why we have lofts on the golf club. Utilize the loft. If you move the ball back in your stance with a 5-iron and then move it back a little more with a 7-iron, for example, let's say here's our 5-iron position right here. If we move it back, if we go to an 8-iron, move it back an inch or whatever they tell you to do, you're doing a number of things. You're changing the loft on the golf club. You're changing your center of gravity. You're changing your arc of your swing. The more you have it back in this stance, the steeper and the more descending the blow of the club face on the ball. And as the sharper you come down on it, obviously the less loft you're going to have. Take your club face, remember how we got our alignment, club face there, and then put your left foot, just move it a little bit. And you'll find that as you look down, your ball is going to be in the same relative area, maybe from your left heel to 1.5 inches into your stance. Okay, now there's one little point we can do to check off our ball position and maintain the same place time and time again. Just as before I take my club head away from the ball, I take one little quick look. Now what I do is when I look down basically out of my right eye, this part of my left hand, where the thumb meets the hand itself, covers my instep on my left foot. Now if I maintain this every time with a 5-iron or a 7-iron or a driver, I know my ball position is in the same place every time. And not only that, I know I'm going to have a nice continuation from my left shoulder down to the club head in a square line. So with ball position, maintain it in the same position all the time for every full shot.
The final element of proper setup is body posture, or as Nick Faldo puts it, body alignment. A change in posture is one of the main reasons Faldo has emerged as a world-class player. So let's see what we can learn as the reigning Masters champion explains this final key element of the setup.
Right, now we've got our feet positioned. Let's go into our body alignment. And the most important thing what we're trying to do is get every part parallel to our target line here. So we start with our knees. We want these level. But then probably the most important area is your hips. You see how I want these in line, which is going to really pull the shoulders into the correct position. Quite often people worry a great deal about the shoulder position, but in fact, if your hips are slightly out of line, you can see how they're pulling slightly left. That's going to automatically pull my shoulder line, again now pointing left. Obviously the other way, if we're a little bit shut, the hips are pointing to the right of target, automatically going to pull the shoulders online. It's impossible to not move these two or move these two independently. Now the next important thing is tipping the waist forward. Now if we go too much from the waist, we create a rounded back, which is a stoop position, very difficult to turn. So where we actually want to bend from is from the hips again, keeping the small of our back nice and straight. We can then tip ourselves forward there into a nice comfortable position.
As you can probably tell from listening to our four players, when you talk about posture and stance, you're really talking about balance. Bobby Jones once said that you can't stand too close to the ball. In fact, we find that most golfers stand too far away and their balance is impaired. If, like Jones said, you stand close to the ball, your arms hang comfortably at your side, I think you'll find from there you can make a pretty good swing. I wish it were always this easy.
How you doing, gang? Come on by, visit with us. You're looking really good. Wow.
No, this isn't Disney World. It's the PGA Merchandise Show at the Orlando, Florida Convention Center, where some 12,000 club professionals gather each year to select the clubs, balls, and other merchandise they'll sell to you in their shops. They're wooed by the 564 exhibitors at the show. Only people involved in the business of the game are allowed to enter the maze of 2,000 exhibits. But we have our own expert tour guide to lead us through this golf wonderland.
As anticipated, the graphite really has taken its place in this market now. Metal woods are one of those items that will be here to stay. We've seen a lot of cavity back irons. They're in, and they've been produced by almost every manufacturer. However, there are some surprises, and I'd like to show you some of those. Come on in and let's have a look-see.
Every major manufacturer, and some that only have a peripheral interest in the game, pull out their biggest marketing guns and wildest promises. Everything is bigger and better, straighter and longer during this 4-day walkathon. Advice to attendees should include a reminder to bring comfortable shoes. Or perhaps you could order a pair from the most famous shoe salesman at the show.
Thanks a lot, Gary.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
For the 1990 PGA show, this is one of the few classic clubs you'll see today. It's a Persimmon driver, an absolute replica of Byron Nelson's club, the one he used in 1945. And that year he had an average of 68.3. Cleveland Classic have reproduced their club, and they've called it the 68.3. You'll notice that the irons are also the classic McGregor irons that he used during the same year, also called 68.3. It's a classic blade, and unfortunately it's not cheap. This will cost you in the neighborhood of about $1,300. However, if you buy a set, you'll also get a book, Winning Golf by Byron Nelson, which I'm sure will help your game tremendously.
Not everything at the show will help your game. In fact, some things can be downright distracting. But if you can't play well, at least you can look marvelous. And there are even some golf clubs that you can take a shine to.
Really, this is certainly not a classic club. How about explaining the concept to us?
All right, Frank. Well, as you can see, there is no neck compared to the conventional metal wood head. And the shaft, instead of stopping up here in the neck as it normally does, the shaft stops here, very close to the ball. It takes dead weight from the neck and puts it where the only place where weight counts on a golf club.
That's an interesting concept. Approximately how much does the club cost to the average purchaser out there, the average golfer? How much would you have to pay for that particular driver?
Well, they're competitive. For a graphite shaft, about $190 a piece, and for a steel shaft, all right around $135.
There's something for every golfer's taste, whether you want your own mobile television unit, a bizarre golf bag, a smile under every umbrella, or a pesky tricycle.
As far as I'm concerned, 1990 show, this is the prettiest club we have. It's the Hogan grind. You can see the lines of it, they're very traditional. It's a steel shafted club, sells for about $650. On the other hand, the same club can have in a graphite shaft, it sells for in the neighborhood of about $1,500. And I'm not too sure that I can recommend that anybody pay that amount for the differences in performance.
It's worth remembering that it's performance that really counts for the club pros attending the show. And for you, the golfers who will be urged to buy the merchandise they bring home to put in their shops. So we say goodbye to the gaudy glitz, glitter, and glamour of the 1990 show. And the ceramic golfers, and the real ones who make this show out of this world.
Ask a golf fan which of the game's 4 major championships has provided the most final round drama over the years, and chances are he'll answer the Masters. We'll begin our Masters coverage by visiting with tournament chairman Hord Hardin in his lair at Augusta National. Since 1980, Hardin has presided over the spectacle that is the Masters. It's a job he takes very seriously, as the somber surroundings of his office might indicate. For all that, however, Hardin hasn't lost touch with the multitudes that see the tournament each year. He is a golfer.
Well, I didn't play really until I got out of college. I played other sports in college. At that time, golf was a sissy game. Only fellas that played golf then were fellas who weren't playing football and basketball and baseball. But I finally was pulled into it, liked it like most people do. I was practicing law in those days, and I wasn't very anxious to get my name in the paper as a golfer. I was sure that clients wouldn't look very favorably on that. My first competition of any consequence other than club activity was, I think, 1946, when I entered the state amateur in Missouri and played it very well and lost the finals on the 37th hole. When I became a member here, I got involved first as a member of the USGA Executive Committee. We were always on the Rules Committee here. And then I became a member here, and ultimately, after I had served my terms, I guess is more proper, as president of the USGA, Mr. Roberts asked me to be chairman of the Rules, which I was until I became chairman of the club. Mr. Roberts was the most innovative man in golf at the time when golf needed that. He was the one who came up with the leaderboards and the plus or minus scoring system. He was the one who said, we're not going to charge people for pairing sheets. We're going to give them to them. Augusta is not a place for us to try to make money. And we're trying to, as Mr. Roberts often said, we're trying to contribute to the advancement of the game. It's a kind of a hackneyed expression, but that's what he said, and it's still the objective. I think Amen Corner is, by all odds, the best part of the golf course, all 18, in fact. I like those holes. They're different, demanding. Of course, we don't play them from the far back tees, you understand. This membership is smarter than that.
While Hardin and his fellow members of Augusta National don't have to play the course from the championship tees, contestants in the Masters do. Here's what some of this year's favorites rank as Augusta's most difficult hole.
I think the hardest hole at Augusta is the first hole. I think 13 probably is the most difficult.
The 12th hole, I have a hard time getting the right club out of the bag, and then when the way the wind swirls there in the pine trees, it's probably the hardest short hole anywhere in the world.
The 12th hole there, the par 3, very, very small green.
But I have to say the 12th hole when it's windy.
Statistically speaking, the par 4 10th hole was the most difficult during the 1989 Masters with a stroke average of 4.23. Now, statistics don't tell the entire story. However, as pressure creates disasters during the final round each year. What is it about Augusta National that brings out the best in some and the not so best in others? Well, often it seems that Augusta National chooses who her champion will be, and who better to tell us what an equally kind and cruel mistress the course can be than 6-time champion Jack Nicklaus and 4-time runner-up Tom Weiskopf.
Augusta is a marvelous, marvelous place to play golf because you're given the freedom to play golf. You can drive the ball on every hole if you're good enough. It's a position type of golf course. There's a left half of the fairway that you must play to when there's a certain pin. There's a right half that you must play to a certain position. Great shots are rewarded at Augusta. They're not penalized. If you play aggressively at Augusta and have the courage to play the proper shot, you can overcome Augusta with some very low scoring. It looks a heck of a lot easier than it ever seems to be. The front 9, I think, is probably the tougher of the two to score on. I think any player would say that. It's the type of 9 holes that I think that if you can shoot 35 to 33, then you've got some confidence going into that backside, which is very susceptible to a lot of birdies and possibly some eagles.
I really start with 10 as being a 9 holes of golf that you can really take advantage of if you play good golf, but you can also get wasted away if you get a little careless. The 11th hole, let's put it in the fairway, put it somewhere to the right of the water. That's really all I try to do at 11. I mean, if I miss the green at 11, it doesn't really bother me. I don't want to miss it too far because it's a hard chip, but I'd like to get it somewhere just on the right side of the green and 2-putt and move on. The 12th hole is probably the most dangerous par 3 that I know in golf.
Only 155 yards. Every pin is difficult on this particular hole. I'll never forget it because I happened to make a 13 on it one time. A 3 is always a good score at 12, a par at 11, and a par at 10. Those 3 holes must be parred throughout, the daily 4 rounds I think that you play.
13, to me, probably my favorite par 5 in golf. It's probably not a par 5. I mean, it's only 465 yards. But that tee shot it's such an important tee shot to try and work the ball around the corner, but not work the ball around the corner. Meaning, if you really can't, you can't attack the hole unless you work it around the corner, but it's so dangerous to try to work it around that you just got to be very, very careful of how much you take it left of those trees. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do with your second shot that are dictated by your tee shot and the length of the second shot that you have. So that's what I like about that. It has so many options. You can do so many things, yet if you play the perfect tee shot, the perfect second shot, you're always putting for eagle. 15 is a hole that, once you put it in position, it's one of the great second shots in golf. And I mean, there's so many times that I've turned there and I've hit the second shot and I've felt the ball off of the club and I say, I've got to make it. It's a great turning hole. You can make 3 there or you can make 7, just boom.
Number 16, one of the most picturesque, glamorous par 3s, complemented by beautiful surroundings, big Georgia pines, azaleas on the left, this serene pond that almost looks ice-like. Not a difficult green to hit, but a difficult green to position your ball to keep from 3-putting, especially when the pin's in the right front or back right. It's the type of hole that a lot of things can happen, good and bad. People have executed great shots there, and because of that, they've won the tournament. 18 is a very, very difficult tee shot. I think because the long hitter, it almost takes the 3-wooder driver out of his hands because of the fear of the 2 deep bunkers on the left side that if you're a little bit unlucky, then you can't reach the green from. That holds you back a little bit being a long hitter because you can take a 1-iron, not get the ball into trouble off the tee with a 1-iron, but then you're forced to play anywhere from a 4, 5, or 6-iron for a second shot with a kind of an uphill lie, and that's tough to play uphill with a long iron and still control the ball as well. And we've seen a lot of unusual things happen with Ben Crenshaw, Greg Norman, Jack Nicklaus have hit poor shots in past years by playing short of those bunkers.
I think the back nine at Augusta is just a great back nine, and one that, you know, that I just, every time I go out on it, I mean, the front nine to me is always a positioning nine. If I can get it around, if I just try to get 1 or 2 under par, or not hurt myself, don't be over par, get myself in a position to be able to attack that back nine, then I can shoot a good round.
I'll never forget what inspired me to play golf. I was caddying with Ed Sullivan. His number was 98 and I was number 99. And one of the fellows we were caddying for said, did you hear the news? Francis Weeman just defeated Varden Ray. Oh, I was so inspired to think that a caddy had defeated the 2 greatest players. So I wanted to know all about the grip and everything about Ouimet. And I fell in love with Ouimet. I tried to copy his swing. We were great friends for life. During the war, I got very, very sick, was sent to the hospital, and I was on the deathbed for 5 days. When I was discharged from the hospital, the doctor said, now, don't get an indoor job, go outdoors. So I went to the public course, fooling around, and the professional there, Al Soucy, saw me make a hole-in-one on the first hole. And I had my name in the paper, and the headline, it was Eugenio Saraceni. And I didn't like the looks of the name. It sounded more like a violin player than a golfer. So I changed it to Gene Sarazen. Hagen did more for the professional golfers than anybody. I never forget one time in Sandwich, England, we were playing with the Prince of Wales and some other Duke. And we got to the 9th hole, and the Prince asked us if we'd like to have a sandwich or a drink. And so we said, well, that'll be fine. So we walked in the clubhouse, and we sat down. All of a sudden, this waiter with tails on, all dressed up, and he whispered to the Prince's ear, he said, you know, these boys are not allowed in here. Well, the Prince shouted out, you either stop that nonsense or I'll take the Royal out of the Royal St. George. That was the end of that. The doors were all open. I was the first one to make the professional Grand Slam in 1935 when I holed out that double eagle at Augusta. You see, I had won the American, the British, and the PGA, and when I holed out that 232-yard shot for a 2 and picked up 3 strokes on 1 hole. There's just Hagen and myself playing, and I recall Hagen was down about 50, 60 feet from me, and he says, hurry up, I've got a date tonight. So I took the 4-wood and took a slash at it, and the ball was hit absolutely perfect. The minute I hit the ball, I knew it was going to go on that green. And I saw it go all the way. And the crowd, there was only about 23 people around that green. They just stood silent. And all of a sudden, they jumped and ran all over. The ball had gone in the hole. All I have to say is that I'm 88 years old, and I think I've put in a full life. I've gone through everything. Tornadoes, wars, depressions, and I'm still alive.
Tempo is one of the keys to consistent play. It helps to eliminate the pressure and the stress from the game. Through the whole of my career, swing tempo has been my strongest feature. To illustrate, I will hit 15 shots with 5 different clubs. See if you can spot where I change. As you can see, the swing gets a little longer, but the tempo remains the same.
Greg Norman, Australia's great white shark, would seem to have it all: the game, the looks, the money. Yet he's become golf's heartbreak kid. In the 1980s, he won one major, the 1986 British Open, but was runner-up in 4 others, including the 86 and 87 Masters. Last year, Norman needed only to par the final hole to get into a Masters playoff with Nick Faldo and Scott Hoke, and he made bogey. Indeed, it seems as each year, Norman bears down on Augusta National with all his might, only to walk away frustrated. And the theories abound on why Norman hasn't won the Masters. Some say he shoots himself out of it early, only to fall short when he charges back.
I don't think you can shoot yourself out of the tournament. Augusta National is a type of golf course where you know somebody's going to have an average to pull around at least one time, unless the conditions are so benign that the guys are playing darts into the greens. So you really, I don't like that where you say I have played myself out. I don't think I have.
I think the biggest problem that Greg has is that everybody expects him to win. And when everybody expects him to win, and you know, maybe I'm putting a monkey on his back too by saying that I expect him to win. It's certainly not intended to be that way to Greg, because I think I can understand the problems that he's going through, because you just, you know, when you dominate as much as he has overseas and comes over here, it's tougher to win over here.
Even though I haven't won there, I haven't seen anything really negative to say, okay, you know, why should that flash back in my mind? You know, I love the golf course. I love every tee shot. I love every hole that I play, so I have nothing but positive thoughts.
After more than 3 decades at Augusta, the Golden Bear has never forgotten his first Masters.
When I first qualified for the Masters in 1959, I remember driving into Augusta, and of course this is the thing that you know, with Jones being my hero, and driving down Magnolia Lane for the first time, that was, you know, it's funny here, 30 years later, I still get excited driving down Magnolia Lane. Anyway, that first year I was 19 years old, and as an amateur, I stayed up in the Crow's Nest, which is right up in the top of the clubhouse, and stayed up there with a couple of the fellas, and I mean, when we went there, the amateurs were provided with meals for $1 for breakfast, $1 for lunch, and $2 for dinner, and just to keep our amateur status intact, of course. And I'll never forget, Phil Rogers and I were there, and we ended up having they had to change the rules for Phil, because Phil and I, every night, we'd have double shrimp cocktail, double sirloin steak, and if we felt like we'd have a third one, you know, and finally he says, fellas, if you're going to have more than one, we have to charge you another $2. That first year at Augusta, it was 1959. I ended up missing the cut that year. I shot 76, 74. And at the end of 36 holes, I remember I had hit 31 greens in regulation, had 8 3-putt greens, and shot 150. Arnold was leading the tournament. Arnold had hit 19 greens, had no putts at all, and Art Wall was at 147, 3 shots in front of me, and Art Wall ended up winning the golf tournament. The Masters, as an amateur, was a great experience for me. 1959, my father came with me, and Bob Jones would invite us down to the cabin. After having met Jones on a couple of previous occasions, he was always just very gracious and couldn't have been nicer. And he said he'd always find me at the amateur dinner, and he says, how about stopping down and bringing your father down to the cabin for a little visit, which we did every year. And then as the years went on, that became a traditional thing for us to do. So I had that great feeling about Augusta, a great feeling about Bob Jones, and it's always been a very, very special place in my life.
One of the questions I'm asked by golfers of all ability levels is, how come I can't get my practice tee swing over to the first tee? People say the longest walk in golf is from the practice range over that first tee. And what you find is that when you're on the driving range of the practice tee, you just get kind of a ball-beating mood. You're just up there slashing balls. Many people practice only with their driver, hit very few irons or certainly short irons. And so when they arrive at the first tee, they come there in kind of a ball striking or ball beating mood as opposed to a playing mentality. And so what I've had some success with is having players to create on the practice range the first 2 or 3 holes they're about to play on the course by visualizing a tree or a sand trap out in the fairway or out on the range that would be in a fairway, and hitting the ball off the range, off the tee, saying, that would be a 7-iron in. Then creating the green on the first hole, and then hitting, say, a 7-iron into that particular green. If they miss the green, they got a chip over on the practice range. And so going through at least the first 2 or 3 holes you're about to play, having played them already on the practice range, you should have some success over there. If you don't play them well, you can go back and start over. So you really get to the first tee that way in a playing mentality or playing modality, if you will, a way of thinking that's different from just a ball beating kind of mentality. And it helps you get off that first tee with a greater probability of success, which leads to better shots the rest of the round.
Oh, great shot, Scott.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
You can declare a ball unplayable at any time or place on the golf course, except when a ball lies in a water hazard. And it's more than likely that you wouldn't think of declaring a ball unplayable unless it were under a tree and you couldn't get at it, or some other extreme situation. After all, declaring a ball unplayable is a one-shot penalty. But you can use this rule to your advantage. You have 3 options when you declare a ball unplayable. 1, you can play the ball from as near as possible at the spot from which you last played. 2, you can drop within 2 club lengths of where the ball lay unplayable, not near the hole. And 3, you can drop a ball at any spot behind where the ball lay unplayable, as long as that spot is on a straight line from the hole and through the spot where the ball lay. Under this option, you can go as far back as you like on this line. Suppose you have a greenside chip to the hole and you hit it too hard. It goes past the hole and into a bunker. If you happen to be a terrible bunker player and you're afraid it might take you 3 or maybe 4 tries to get out, and you're confident in your chipping game, the rules can help you. Why not declare the ball unplayable and play it again from the original spot? It will cost you a penalty stroke, and it must be declared before your next shot is played. It makes sense. If you're a bad sand player, it'll probably take you a few strokes to get it out of the bunker anyway. An important point to remember is that only one of your 3 options will get you out of the bunker, which is playing from where the original ball was last played. Because if your ball is in the bunker and you decide to invoke the 2 club length option or the option of dropping behind where the ball lay, you must drop the ball in the bunker. So, by knowing your game and knowing the rules, you could save a few strokes if you're a poor sand player.
They say the hardest thing about golf is keeping your concentration. Here at the Grand Cypress Resort in Orlando, Florida, you'll find it almost impossible to keep your mind from frequent wanderings. This 1,500-acre multi-dimensional vacation and conference center can be summed up in one word: distraction. Whether it be the 45 Jack Nicklaus designed holes of golf, the sensational amenities and recreational diversions of the resort, or Disney World, which is less than 10 miles away, a golfer's focus will be challenged. Let's start with the golf. The north, south, and east nines are the original holes of the resort. 4 sets of tees make each of these nines playable for golfers of all levels, at least as far as length is concerned. All 3 original nines offer a generous driving area on most driving holes. It's the approach shots that challenge golfers of all levels. The areas surrounding the greens offer a variety of bunkers, mounds, and difficult lies that can make par a difficult score on any hole. Those unfamiliar with Nicklaus's trademark chocolate drops alongside the fairways will quickly become familiar with them. They're covered with love grass, but there's not much to love about them. The new course was opened in 1987 and is Nicklaus's tribute to the old course at St. Andrews, Scotland. The 1st and 18th holes are reproductions of those same holes at St. Andrews, right down to the Swilcan Burn in front of the 1st green and the Valley of Sin on the 18th green. The distinctive stone bridges on the course are complete with reproductions of centuries-old algae stains one would see crossing the burn on the old course. The course play is wide open from the tee, and like links courses, it's really a matter of catch as catch can. You might find a drive that splits the middle of a fairway nestled in a pot bunker, so beware. The most difficult hole may be the 17th, a reproduction of the road hole at the old course, which is one of the most demanding in championship golf. The green fee for resort guests is $100, and if you need to rent clubs, it will cost you $25. There are no caddies except at the new course, otherwise your cart fees are included. The green fee is only $85 at the new course if you walk. If it's golf instruction you like, you can schedule your vacation around a school at the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf. The schools are among the most high-tech anywhere, and you'll have your own personal swing model created on computer for you. The schools last from 2 to 4 days and range in price from $1,040 to $2,375. Accommodations at the hotel range from first-class rooms for about $150 to bi-level suites with a sleeping loft, bar, and private spa with whirlpool for $1,700 per night, depending on the season. For exercise and fun other than golf, there is the Tennis Center with courts at $16 and the Equestrian Center with $15 pony rides for kids and advanced dressage and jumping instruction for the serious rider. The resort's 11 restaurants and lounges cater to a broad range of tastes for food and mood. The fact that Disney World is so close makes the Grand Cypress a good choice for those who want to mix a family vacation with the yearning for high-level golf. The whole family can play their hearts out during the day and spend the evening relaxing and preparing for the next day's amusement of choice, whatever that may be, Disney World or the courses that Jack built.
You ever hit a chip or a pitch like that? Or have you seen someone hit a chip or a pitch like that? I'll bet you have. And usually the next one, you say to yourself, I know what I did. I let my left hand break down. I'm not supposed to let that happen. I'm supposed to keep that firm. So the next shot usually looks something like this. Way to the right, way to the right. You kept your left hand firm. Both of these bad shots are caused by the identical problem, and I think I have a technique that might work for you and make you good around the greens. In both poor shots, the left arm stops very abruptly at impact, and the hands are forced to keep the club swinging through. The left arm and the club are one. The club is an extension of the left arm. Ideally, your two arms work together. In this case, the left arm is the key because that is the arm that abruptly stops at impact. However long you're going to stroke through a shot, your left arm should swing through the shot just that far. If your left arm continues to stroke through a pitch or a chip, you'll never have the problem of the club head passing up your hands and the left hand breaking down. Let's see if I can hit one for you the correct way. What I'm going to try to do here, as long as the stroke goes to a finish, I'm going to let my left arm swing through right with the stroke. My left arm is not going to stop at impact. Well, now I've got a chance to make a par, and I think all of you know what a valuable tool good chipping and pitching can be to lowering your scores.
Help! SOS! Save our sisters! What's wrong with you folks? Are you going to let the Ladies PGA Tour die a slow and lingering death? How can you do this to Nancy and Jan and Big Mama? Golf fans are supposed to be the most knowledgeable in sports. After all, we not only watch the game, most of us play it. If we're so smart, how come we can't figure out that the women's product is almost as good in its own way as the men's game? Why do run-of-the-mill PGA stops with weak fields have 5 times the purse and 10 times the attendance of women's events, which draw all of their best players? Why is the women's tour in danger of shrinking, while the men's senior tour, the old fogey circuit, is booming? Would you really rather watch Arnold Palmer at 60 than Nancy Lopez at 30? Sign me up for Nancy's Navy. Would you rather watch Gary Player or Jan Stevenson? Is Lee Trevino really any funnier than Joanne Carner? Does Gene Littler, as he approaches Medicare age, have the swing to match Patty Sheehan? No way. Would you rather see Bruce Crampton frown or Beth Daniel grin? Is old Billy Casper really a hotter ticket than Betsy King in her prime? Who's more interesting, Jack Nicklaus or mighty Laura Davies? Okay, don't answer that last one. Somewhere along the way, women's golf has gotten lost. Not the playing of it, mind you, that's never been so good. Go to an LPGA event and you're odds on to see a first-rate event. Take the time to meet Sherry Turner, Ayako Akamoto, Amy Alcott, Colleen Walker, and Lisa Lott Neumann on their own turf. You'll love them. They're personable, cheerful, and uniformly good sports. Heck, they're so starved for attention, they'll probably give you a putting tip between holes and ask if your dog wants an autograph. Weekend players are far more likely to learn something from watching the women than the men. In many cases, they hit the ball about the same distance we do, yet they shoot 10 or 20 or even 30 strokes lower. Wouldn't it be kind of nice to find out how? Yet the 1990 women's season is beset with questions. Will events continue to collapse at the last moment? Will sponsor turnover remain frantic? What will happen after 1990 when Lopez says she'll cut back her schedule drastically to spend more time with her children? Sometimes it seems that the LPGA schedule should be called the TBA schedule, as in to be announced. That's embarrassing. Maybe the problem is marketing or image, but whatever you call it, it's a raw deal. Women's golf has a great tradition and a rich present. It deserves better.
Coming up in the wide world of golf is a preview of the 1990 U.S. Open at Medina Country Club in Medina, Illinois, where Curtis Strange will be going for a 3rd straight Open title. The state-of-the-art instruction series continues with an element of the swing the pros regard as among the most critical, the takeaway. In Legends, we'll spend time with Lord Byron Nelson at his Texas ranch. And in Destinations, you'll see what it's like to spend a golf vacation in Bermuda. You'll see more instruction from the game's best teachers, including Hank Haney and John Redmond. All this and much more coming up in the wide world of golf.
Nick Faldo's Golf Course. Footage courtesy Vestron Video. To get your copy, call 1-800-523-5503. To purchase Curtis Strange's new instruction video, How To Win and Win Again, write NAC Home Video, 1300 Quail Street, Suite 201, Newport Beach, California, 92660. Or call the company collect at 714-553-8039. Jack Nicklaus Golf My Way 1 and 2 are products of World Vision Home Video, 660 Madison Avenue, New York, New York, 10021. Videos may be obtained by calling 1-800-321-3900. Footage provided by World Vision Home Video. Greg Norman, The Complete Golfer, Parts 1 and 2, and Lee Trevino's Priceless Golf Tips, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, are available on video cassette from Paramount Home Video. Videos may be ordered by calling 1-800-445-3800. Lee Trevino's Priceless Golf Tips, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, and Greg Norman, The Complete Golfer, Parts 1 and 2, courtesy of Paramount Home Video. For information on the Grand Cypress Resort, call 1-800-835-7377. For room reservations at the Hyatt Regency Grand Cypress, call 1-800-233-1234. The Wide World of Golf is also available by writing Video Magazines You'll receive 6 bi-monthly issues for only $99.95.